Yeah, you know, y'all are stuck with me making a few words to just kind of, well, this sort of opportunity that we have to hear from our sister students about yet another amazing journey that we've had through them in this trip to South Africa is, you know, in many ways, and I get teary-eyed because, you know, this is, what you do is part of our dream come true. You know, your capacity to go to another country, or your capacity to go to Selma, Alabama, whether it's, you know, South Africa or Selma, Uruguay, I mean, all of the ways in which you all can go and see the world through the lens of leadership, through the lens of being bold leaders. This is our dream. You know, this education that you have is something that is so dear to all of us. And I am deeply grateful to all of you who choose to be at the Women's College. I'm deeply grateful to the friends and alumni and donors who invest in us, because we know that these kind of wonderful, life-changing academic experiences are not always possible when there are so many ways in which your dollars are spent on children and family and classes and cards and gas, and you know, so the fact that we have a group of donors who understand how incredible this experience is for you is such an amazing, there's so much gratitude I have for that, and for all of you in having this experience. You know, in 2007 and 2008, we crafted a very simple mission statement for the college. It's really simple. It's to educate women to be bold leaders in the communities where they live, where they work, and where they engage. It is this kind of experience, whether it's in the United States or in South Africa, that gives you the capacity to be a bold leader, because you see the world differently, because you have taken your classroom experience and you have combined that with this incredible way of interacting with people in places that you might have never gone. And because of that, you will look at the world differently. And because of that, this world will change. Because you have the capacity now to see things in a way that you might have not otherwise had because you went on this trip. So, you know, one of the great things about a women's college is we can get all emotional. And so this makes me all emotional. I hope it chokes all of you up. And, you know, I want to turn it over to our fabulous, go to our students next, to our fabulous students who are going to talk about this experience through their narrative, through a slideshow, and open it up for questions for all of you at some point. And I also want to thank Professor Lennon, because she has been the driving force, particularly behind the internationalization of this college, and I don't think she ever gets enough credit for what she does behind the scenes. People think that having a faculty member go on a trip is like, woohoo! The work that Tiffany does, the work that Dr. Jones does, when they take students on these kinds of trips, this is not them sitting back and enjoying the ride. Right, Art? I mean, this is really an investment that they make, and logistics that they navigate, and a whole host of things that they do to make sure that this educational experience is the best for all of you. So, on behalf of the college, Tiffany, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dean. Hello. Is it afternoon? Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Warren. I'm a Law and Society major, and I was fortunate enough to take this journey to Cape Town, South Africa, with a number of my sister students. So, as we begin, I just want to say welcome. Sayed Nankila, Noki, and welcome. The first welcome is the English language, as you know. The second welcome is a tribal language called Xhosa. Xhosa. from South Africa, and welcome is Afrikaans, which is one of the first languages, one of the indigenous languages in South Africa. So I just wanted to give a formal welcome along with the Dean, and thank you all for being here again. As you know, we are here because a number of us, 11 of us, actually 13 of us, took a journey to Cape Town, South Africa. And it was a remarkable journey. It was an unforgettable journey. We went there to study social justice. We went there to learn about the people, to learn about their communities, and to learn about, their fight, which very much is still alive and continues today. There were a lot of highs, there were a lot of lows, there were a lot of happy times, a lot of sad times. It was a very humbling experience, and one that I think has changed all of us, and probably will continue to change us for the rest of our lives. So without further ado, I would love to invite some of my sister students up here to speak to all of you and to share a little bit about our experience in South Africa. So to begin, I'm going to invite Karen up to talk a little bit about Robben Island, which was one of the first stops on our journey in South Africa.
I'm a Law Society major, and one of my students this morning said, I look like I'm South African. And I said, no, I don't. She goes, you're so calm, you're so relaxed, and then you're so colorful. Well, this is not South African. This is Chinese. But I had an agenda when I wanted to go on this trip, and it was all about social justice. Of course, as a minority, I followed South Africa through apartheid. And I actually, experienced some Jim Crow. I'm a little bit older than some students. So it was like I wanted to do that comparison. And I was so happy that Robben Island was one of the first things we did. That was our first full day there. And it was so intriguing. It was very sad. It was made me euphoric at the same time, because that was the main thing. I wanted to see what apartheid was like in person, not on the TV. So we took this really nice ferry over to the island. The island is very desolate, very barren, very, very ugly. The only thing good about it is the waves crashing on the boats. When we got to the prison itself, it was very modern. It was built in the 1980s. And I was surprised because I expected it to be older. Robben Island had served as a prison and a leper colony since the 1700s. The prison ended in 1996. And at that time, they made the island into a museum. So it has a horrible history. And when I got back, I did some additional research on the island. And each century, there were some very, very terrible imprisonments that happened there. And they were very, completely unlike our prisons. So, and we actually got to see the cells that Mandela was in. We were led by a tour guide who had himself been imprisoned on Robben Island. We got to see the mat, and for some reason I totally forgot to do this. Their sleeping mats were approximately 3/4 to an inch thick, and there was some kind of fiber, and I'm not sure what fiber, but that's what they slept on the concrete floors. In the early 80s, about 1980, they got months. But Mandela first went to the island in 1964, in June of 1964. So for most of his incarceration there, he was sleeping on mats, as were all the other prisoners. His prison number was 466/64, meaning he was the 466th prisoner in 1964, which means they were incarcerating people at more than one per day on that island. And the work they did was breaking rocks for no reason. But that was their exercise and their work. I have to look at this for a moment. The feeling I got while I was viewing the island and walking around, and then I kind of went off by myself too, as my heart kept pounding, and it's like, okay, the island itself made me envision apartheid. The modern prison, with the sleeping conditions, Most of the people that were incarcerated during the 1960s, late 50s and 60s, were all black, or colored as they call mixed races. So it was like, how does this compare to life in the United States? And there is no comparison. We actually got no idea about the type of food they ate, but I'm sure it wasn't, that nutritional. When we got back, I guess the day before we left, Mandela went to the hospital for a lung condition. And the tour guide had told us that many of the prisoners there had lung conditions from working on the rock piles. They had no kind of safety gear, and so a lot of them developed lung conditions. And who knows if that's why he's suffering from that, but he is 94 years old, so I'm sure he's in good health. But when we left Robben Island, it was a lot to take in. And so it took me a couple of days to think through it. And then when I got back, I thought about it more. And it was like the island itself depicted South Africa to me. Even though apartheid is officially dead, it's still living. And it will continue to live for decades. Their system is upwardly mobile. I mean, it's the richest country in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's very, very modern. There's people working very, very hard to make changes in the system, but you still see it. And when I came back, I thought more and more and more about Robben Island. And I thought, we are so lucky that in the United States we've never had systems like that, except for during World War II, which was a short time. But this continued for decades. And in some ways, I took Robben Island and compared it to the township living, where the blacks and the colored live. So it's kind of like they're still on little islands. And it breaks your heart. It does break your heart, but it also makes you commit to making changes. So for me, Robben Island was like the high point of the trip. The low point is backpacking. I'm just so glad to go, and I spoke with Ms. Quinnett and told her how grateful I was for her scholarship, because I would never have gone to Africa, and it's something that is dear to my heart. And after I leave the Women's College, I plan to work in conflict resolution in Africa. I don't know where it will be, depends on what organization I get with. But I do hope sometime in the future to go back to South Africa, to compare and see how they've worked so hard and made the changes. But my social justice education there was awesome. It really was. So thank you.
I just wanted to point out really quick that these are some of the photos. The one at the top left-hand corner is our journey on the ferry from Cape Town going over to Robben Island. The photo in the lower left-hand corner is all of us and a number of other individuals that took the trip with us. We were inside of a barrack, inside of the actual prison. We did get to do a tour all throughout the prison, including and saw a lot of the different cells, including Nelson Mandela's cell. And those are just, some other photos of us. So anyways, it was a great experience, and it definitely set the tone for our trip really early out as to what we were going to embark on as we continued the journey. The next day, we would leave then and go to a wonderful women's organization where we saw ladies sitting around making different beads to sell for income and providing shelter to other women in need. And we also had an opportunity to learn about the Amy Dill Foundation, which was a really powerful foundation out there, as were many of them. So I want to invite Julie and Stacy to come up and talk a little bit about the Amy Dill Foundation.
Thank you. My name is Stacy Brower, and I'm a Law Society student.
I'm Julie Coates, and I'm a Law and Society student.
Anyway, one of our, I would say, second experiences into the township was visiting the Amy Beal Foundation. Just a little background on Amy Beal. Amy Beal, her name is Amy Elizabeth Beal. She was a white American graduate from Stanford University and was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa. On August 25th, 1993, Amy was killed by Black Cape Town residents while a mob was shouting racial slurs. In 1994, Amy's parents, Linda and Peter, founded the Amy Beal Foundation Trust to develop and empower youth in the townships in order to discourage further violence. The Beals' level of compassion, forgiveness, and unselfishness demonstrates a high level of standards we all should embrace and live by. During the South Africa trip and visiting the foundation allowed me to witness the progression of restorative social justice by realizing there are many possibilities and direct paths in making positive social change within any community and any situation. I'd like to share one quote from Peter Beal on the day that the men were released. He is quoted as stating as he shook their hands, as I quote from Peter Beal, "The most important vehicle of this reconciliation is open and honest dialogue. We are here to reconcile a human life which was taken without an opportunity for dialogue. When we are finished with this process, we must move forward in open arms." So powerful. I'm going to turn it over to Julia at this time right now, because she can take more of the personal experiences of the issue.
So what I'm going to do is tell you what we experienced that day, and it will be from my point of view, obviously. We went to Robben Island, and we went through that experience, and then our next experience was going on a bus ride to a township. So the pictures that you saw of the homes, that's what we were taking in as we're driving through a township with homes that were below poverty levels that we would see in the United States. And some of these homes were made of metal, wood, cardboard, put together in such form. What I noticed was that they had barbed wire around the perimeter, whether it was the home or whether it was the fencing around it. There was a lot of barbed wire everywhere. We're on a bus together, and we're taking in this environment. And the lady that is taking us, Vipka, she's telling us that we're going to this place that is the Amy Beal Foundation. And she told us a little bit about the background of Amy Beal and that situation, and I didn't know anything about it, as Stacy just told you. And so 4 men killed a white woman that was in their neighborhood helping the children in their neighborhood. And that family went in and basically testified to have them released. And then the family approached 2 of those men to work in programs after school for children, to help these children in the same area that the men killed Amy Beal. And we were going to one of those locations. And we're going through all of this poverty, and we turn into a school setting, and it's colorful, and the music's going, and they're playing music for us, and we've come to a haven. And we're all struck in awe of the story that we've heard on the bus. And then we're so excited to see the children. And they played music for us, and they danced for us. And Vipka told us that one of the men that was imprisoned for killing Amy Beal would probably be there, but that we would not be introduced. We would not probably recognize him. And we were taken on a tour to the back of one of the buildings. And 2 people approached our group and joined our group to tell us more about the foundation. Unbeknownst to us, one of those was the gentleman in the red cap, Easy, and he is one of the men that killed Amy Beal. We didn't know this until our great professor asked how he became involved in the foundation. And at that moment, I don't know how those around me felt, but at that moment, I felt goosebumps go up my arms as I watched him. He lowered his head. He lowered his eyes. And he didn't have eye contact with us, but he said something similar to, "Mine's a hard story, but it's important for you to know." And at that moment, I realized this man has been given a second chance. And we are right now standing in the midst of what restorative justice can look like. And I was so taken aback. I turned to one of the people that was beside me and I said, "What is this called?" Is this called forgiveness? What is this? How do you even put a name to this? It touched my soul to be there and to witness not only the good that's being done in this neighborhood because of the Amy Beal family and the foundation that they have formed, but because this man has been given a second chance and he is working directly with children like he grew up to give them a second chance. And I will never forget that moment when I saw the emotion of a man that had been given a second chance. So that's really what the Amy Beal Foundation was to us. And not only did our hearts bond there, but we physically bonded with this little boy. He ran down the sidewalk waving to us the whole entire time as our bus was rounding the corner and coming out of that haven of the school. And what a sweet little boy and a great memory to have to take with us after that. Thank you.
This little boy, I just wanted to add really quick, he just latched on to Dory. Dory's not here with us today. She had an emergency that just came up this morning, but he was, I don't know what it was, he saw Dory, and next thing you know, he was just glued to her side. It was the cutest little thing, and Julie is right, as we were leaving, as our bus was leaving, he literally ran down the sidewalk, waving to us the whole time as we were leaving, and we didn't want to leave. We didn't want to leave the township. We didn't want to leave him. It was certainly a really powerful experience. For almost a solid week later, we would then move on to partnering with an organization. We moved on to partner with an organization called Eco Africa, and through Eco Africa, we had a fabulous host by a lady named Vika. Vika was from Germany, but has lived in South Africa for some time and has done a number of, is doing activism work there, and she was just amazing, wonderful. She took us into the wilderness where we had to backpack in the Western Cape and hike up through the mountains. It was an amazing experience, and we all kind of felt different about it to begin. But I want to bring Kelly up to the podium now to share a little bit about her experience. Dory's here! I'm going to put Dory on the spot and have her share her experience as well.
My name is Kelly Davis. I'm a communications major at the Women's College, and I just would like to tell you, I brought you guys the low part. They've already kind of told you the depressing part of it. The reason why I chose to go on this trip was as an experience outside myself. I don't camp. I don't hike. I do not pee in the woods. So this was a completely different experience from anything that I've ever done, and it changed my life. And now I will pee in the woods. and bathe. And I will hike, and I will camp. The women that we were paired up with, they work from different NGOs around, and they were set up with us through Eco Africa. They were phenomenal. They were warm and open and friendly, and just an inspiration, not only by the work that they do, but one of the girls in my group, her name is Dombe. She is 40 years old. She has been HIV positive for 13 years. She never complained. She never said, I can't. And that was powerful to me, to see someone that is going through their life with an illness and have children and work and still manage to go hike and camp and carry a 60-pound backpack and never complain. So that was my experience. That touched my heart, and I couldn't ask for anything more. women from Aduco will be friends of mine for the rest of my life. And I wish I could have taken all of you with me, and you could have seen the highs of the camping and the lows of being in the woods and the gale force winds. It was not fun, but I did it. I just want to share one more thing with you, and it's a word that I learned, and it's a word that will stick with me forever. It's called Ubuntu, and it means I am because we are. So that's a part of social justice for me. If you think about that word, I am because we are. So I'm going to let Dory go before I start crying. Thank you very much.
I'm Dory Spots. I'm sorry for being late. And I was in a different group than Kelly was. We were split up. I don't know how much you guys have heard so far. But the first thing and the most important thing I want to say is I earned this shirt. You only get this shirt if you've done the course. And so perhaps I graduated this year. I'm an alum of the Women's College, and I'm not really sure which one I'm more proud of right now. Truly one of the most empowering and amazing pivotal moments of my life, the entire experience. I would have not been able to have this experience the way that I did if it wasn't for the Women's College in Aduco, Africa, and all of my sister students and all of these amazing people that we encountered and met. And the camping experience, I think the thing that I got the most from, that is sort of an analogy for my experience here, is that we couldn't have done it alone. Honestly, we had to rely on each other so much, and a lot of us, I think it was a learning experience for us because we're not good at that in some ways. Women have a hard time asking for help, I think, and we think that we have to be tough and strong by ourselves and just kind of get through, and we really learned to break down those barriers and also really identify barriers, what we tell ourselves in every day that we can't do. And I'll just share this last part with you. There were no men with us in my group. And so at the end, as we were coming up this last final push up the hill to go back to base camp, the other group had a man, Wally. And that was the first, it dawned on me, that was the first man I'd seen in almost 4 days. And I just remember thinking, I cannot believe that we did this by ourselves. That we, and how powerful that was to know that there's nothing, truly nothing we can't do. And we weren't athletes, we weren't outdoor girls, we weren't anything like that. And we went there and we killed it. So I'm so proud of all of us. So thank you all.
Well, I just want to say that in my group, we did have the man, Lolly. And listen, I was a damsel in distress. I was happy to have a man. He worked so hard for all of us women that we named ourselves Lolly's Angel. Yes, we were loving that. But one thing that we didn't explain is that, so as we partnered with Aduco Africa, there were 11 of us students plus our faculty and staff, and I think 9 or 10 South African women that actually came with us. So all while we were in the wilderness, we were in the wilderness with them. And we were learning about each other's cultures and learning about each other's struggles. And so that's where we really got to forge our relationships with South Africa and the women and the men, Lolly, of Cape Town. So it was great. This has been by one of our lovely divas from South Africa. These are just some pictures of us when we actually got back to what's considered the base camp, which is the area that we started from when we started our wilderness trip. So once we got back, we had feasts, we sung, we danced. We all of us Americans band together and we did our national anthem, and all of the South Africans got together and they sang their national anthem, and it was just a really great time. So I just wanted to add that really quick before we move on. And so next we're going to talk about Langa Township, and this was one of the townships that we went in, and I'm going to ask Leah to come up and explain just a little bit about what a township is and talk about her experience in Langa.
to, we spent 2 nights in Manga. And I don't know about everybody else, but when Vika and Tiffany went to drop us off, I was going, you're not really doing this. You're not really leaving us here. It was really one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. I was horrified. So you see pictures of the townships, you know, in the news and movies, whatever. You see a township from a highway, and all you see is the shacks, the tin roof material shacks. And so that's what you think a township is. And that was pretty much what I thought a township was when we got dropped off in Langa. So Sibiwe, who is like the most impressive social entrepreneur I've ever seen, was our guide through Langa. And this is our first stop in Langa at the community center. So we went on a walking tour of Langa, and he took us around the township. It's the oldest township in Cape Town. So, I mean, these kids in this township, I was just a disaster about these children. They have nothing, obviously, right? They have absolutely nothing. And I have never seen happier children truly in my life. And it's like, you know, you hear these things and you can say these things, but to actually see it, you know, to have a 5-year-old who may or may not have eaten today run up and give you a huge hug, it's just, it's an unbelievable experience. So anyway, you see the shanty homes from the highway, but what you really see when you walk into the township, they have the very low class area, which is like the shack homes, and then they have a middle class area, which is the area we stayed in, and they would probably be comparable to our very lower class neighborhoods. But in the middle class area, there's TVs, there's refrigerators, running water, you know. And then they have a high class area with big, huge houses, with Lexuses and BMWs parked in front. And I found that just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. And I think part of it had to do with Langa itself. There's some townships where you just can't have anything. You can't have anything nice. You can't walk down the street with a cell phone or even a piece of candy. But in Langa, there's people who've done very well for themselves, and they stay in their township, and they represent their people, and they're there for their people, and they're respected within their communities. And in one of the poorest places in the world, you can park your BMW on the street and nobody's gonna mess with it. So it was a really interesting dynamic. This is, these two munchkins were just the cutest things we ever saw. We spent a lot of time watching them. They got in a little fight. It was just adorable. And then these pictures are from Happy Feet Youth Project. So this is a project that Sibiwe started himself in Langa. And it's a youth project for kids. They dance. They have these little boot dances that they performed for us. That's them all dancing. And what I really learned from this is in Langa, you know, Sibiwe he gets up and he decides to do something and he does it. And that's that. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't think about it. Oh, I want to start a kids program. Here you are, Happy Feet Youth Project. So, I mean, I cannot even put into words the things we learned in Langa. I just can't even begin to describe it. And all of it, I feel like it would sound so superficial anyway. You know, all these people have nothing, and they'll give you the shirt off your back. You know, you hear these things all the time. But you see it, and you're there in it, and it's just, it's an unbelievable experience. So these pictures are from our last day. And we got to take our little sissy to school. We had a 3-year-old girl in our house. Kelly and Dory and Megan had a 7-year-old girl in their house. And we just fell in love with those little girls. They were just wonderful. And so we got to take Sissy to school the last day, and they sang for us. And then there's Kelly and Dory and Megan with their house mother. Our house mothers just treated us like queens. It was just an amazing experience. And this just, you know, I don't know. I would recommend everyone go. And I hope we can go back someday. It was irreplaceable.
I realize that I missed inviting Pam up here to talk about Longa as well. So if we could just take a couple minutes, Pam, if you would like to join me up here, we'd love to have your perspective as well.
Hello, I'm Pamela Young. I'm a senior in business administration, and I too was fortunate to go on that trip. And as everyone has already stated, it was absolutely life-changing in a very good way. Since I was directed to speak about Langa, I think I will. I have wonderful memories of Langa, partly because that whole township is full of dichotomies. It isn't what it is, but yet it is. You know, it's like has been mentioned before, it's a town where the perimeter is surrounded by those shack buildings. And we learned from our tour guide, C.B. Way, that all of those aren't really just South African people that have come from the village, but there are other people from other African countries and places. And they come from some of the villages in the countryside trying to get work, and then discovering that they won't get it. They just try to set up house for themselves because it's too difficult to travel back to where they came from, and it's hopeless where they've come from. But inside the townships, as we stated, there's a middle class and there's a upper class. And what's wonderful about it is that the upper class people can escape. They can move somewhere else, but they don't. They stay there to encourage those that have less. And I thought that was a wonderful phenomenon. In fact, I thought it paralleled African American people maybe a couple decades back, which they, doctors and professional level people used to stay in the neighborhood to encourage. And so my perspective of going there was to see what I could see that compared us, and I'm talking of an African American woman, to the people that have just been released from apartheid only 18 years ago. And what I saw there was that there's a lot being done to improve their situation. Although it is sad, it's bleak, but the courage of the people that we met and their dedication really inspired me. It's like, my goodness, and this is all I'm doing. So I was excited. Sivewe, our host and tour guide of the city of Langa, he was some kind of wonderful. Not only was he tall and beautiful, but he was very, very articulate and knowledgeable, and he had such pride. And as we walked through the streets of Langa, some of those pictures you've already seen, you know, we're concerned. Most of us are middle class people. We're not accustomed to a bunch of debris and stuff on the ground. And we were just walking through that, and he did not apologize for it. And as we got to some of the housing that were initially constructed for 11 to 12 men, and we saw that as many as 42 people were living in these compounds, two-story compounds. I think Tiffany asked him, why was there so much debris, or maybe Vika, well, why was there so much debris and stuff on the ground? And he attributed directly to education. And he was saying that until people are educated, they don't look at the importance of keeping the neighborhood clean. They're just trying to make a living. They're just trying to survive. They don't look at the necessity to conserve water. And just a myriad of things that we take for granted. And so it gave me a better understanding of what was happening. As we walked through this township, we saw people, women, with their faces painted that were burning hair off of goats' heads, or sheep heads. And they're known for doing that. They're the best in their community for burning hair off goats' heads. And these may be some women that have traveled from the villages, couldn't support themselves, found what they can do, and now that's their business. So they've established a business. And like Sibiwe says, they don't come and ask anyone for help. Whatever they have, they put it to use. And so the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class people all come to these women because they're the best at it. So they burn their hair. I don't know what they do after that. They do it and we took pictures.
They eat it.
They eat it. We don't know how they process it or anything. Then there was a lady that had come from a village area and she sold chicken feet. And she was the best at selling chicken feet, and we ate some.
Not all of us.
And it tastes okay. Good stuff. You saw pictures of the African National Congress, and that's like a block away from the Cultural Center. And that street is named Washington Street for George Washington Carver. And I thought,
Booker T. Washington.
I'm sorry.
I was the only one that ever got it right, so I have to say it's Booker T. Washington.
There you go.
I thought it was Denzel Washington.
He was known for his industriousness and inventiveness. So what a good way to build your community on after someone like that. And as we were walking there, he was telling us that, you know, he did support the African National Congress, but he was going to support them by not voting for them because he wanted them to come up. And I just thought that was such a good perspective. He wanted, we've heard from other people that there's a lot of corruption. You can read about it everywhere. But he was supporting them by not voting for them, hoping that that would make a change. I just looked on the internet the other day. He got back in, so he's still. Some of the history also that we learned in Langa was about how, you know, people help each other, and how the children, because of those flats or whatever you want to call them, their life is on the street. In fact, one of the poles that you saw earlier and had a lot of writing on it, that's a poem that someone wrote, and I don't know who it was, had written about the streets of Langa. And, you know, he was saying everything that he did on the streets. He played on the streets, he made people on the streets. And it's because these little combines or flats or whatever you want to call them, if 42 people are living in them, they basically only have a room enough to sleep. You can't live there. You know, you can't have your life. You can't have your life there, so they live on the street. Okay.
It's been 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's okay. Go on.
And so their life is on the streets. And so many of the community centers that we saw in Langa, that's what it was all about. Keeping these children safe, keeping them off the street so that they don't become criminals, and helping them. And one, the first one I think that we saw where the Amy Bill Foundation was established, those people feed 300 kids a day. And I thought that was amazing. And primarily they keep them coming by really gearing to them towards things that they already have interest in. So if a kid is a great cricket player or he's a great soccer player, they make sure he gets to play because it keeps him off the street from getting in trouble and from being harmed. And just that process that so many people are committed to that, to bringing about a change, I thought that was absolutely wonderful. Finally, I will also mention about staying in one of the homes in the township. Being a black woman, you know, coming to a country where primarily everybody that we were dealing with, they were black. But it still was a little bit intimidating because it looked like it might be harmful, some of the areas. When we got to our house mother's home, to me it was like any typical middle class home once you got inside her courtyard. Very nice courtyard, very nice porch, and when we went inside it was absolutely beautiful. I think we took pictures of it. And she was so endearing and kind and called us wonderful, sweet names, like dear one, and my beloved, and sweetie. So she was so kind to us. And she just really put every effort she could into making us feel welcome and warm. And of course we did. We felt really wonderful there with her. And when we left there, after we had stayed there 2 days, it was like she was like family. We were connected to her. The funny thing is, I can't remember her name. That's the sad part. But the image of her, it will never leave. Timsy, thank you.
And I got to room with Pam, so we spooned a little.
There were so many opportunities to see what we could do in our own communities and just to see how much people were striving to make a change. And to me, they've done a lot in 18 years. I don't know what it looked like before, but if they continue on the road, and I'm talking about the local people, I think there's going to be great change. And I'm so thankful to Ms. Quinette because she also blessed me with the scholarship. And I think my thinking will never be the same. And I too carried a 70-pound backpack.
She
and walked
did?
in the
Yes,
wilderness.
she did.
And did unmentionable things in the wilderness. So, I enjoyed it.
Okay, so there were so many wonderful things that we did on the trip. Unfortunately, we can't touch every single thing, but now we'd like to go and talk a little bit about the social justice learning forum that we did, where our fabulous fearless leader, Tiffany Lennon, was actually a speaker at this particular forum. So if I could invite Stacey Lee to come up and share a couple of things from her perspective.
Just a couple.
5 minutes, honey.
I am a poor, white, middle-class girl from Glenside, Pennsylvania. What the heck am I doing getting on a plane, traveling 20 hours, 11,000 miles to go to a place that I know nothing about? I mean, what was I thinking? I know nothing about social justice. The only thing I know about Africa is there is no South Africa, because when you go to Africa, you go on safari, right? So when I was telling my family and friends I'm going to South Africa, the response would always be the same. How's the safari? Well, we didn't go on a safari, and I want to make that perfectly clear. We went to South Africa, and South Africa is a very diverse place to go. I was completely out of my comfort zone. But I tell you, back in 2000, when I divorced my ex-husband, he told me that I would amount to nothing without him. And I am here to tell you that I am somebody. You are somebody too. And you can do anything that you put your mind to. If you think that you can put a 70-pound backpack on your back and travel through the wilderness in a reserve in South Africa, you can do it. I'm also here to tell you that we went to the Learning Forum Day. It was one of the last days of our trip, and it basically encapsulated the full experience of South Africa. And as you can see down on the right-hand corner, what I came to call our fearless leader, Tiffany Lennon, was there, and we have a nickname for her, because during the wilderness portion of the trip, she fell a couple of times. And I don't mean she fell this way. And I don't mean she fell this way. I mean she fell this way. Like a turtle with the shell on her back. So we gave her a nickname of McDiver. That's just kind of an intimate story. Let me get back to the Learning Forum here. Our focus for the day was social justice in law and society. Something I don't know anything about. But what I want to mention to you is the 5 speakers that we had there that day. We had a speaker by the name of Sharon Florentine. Sharon Florentine is the Chief Director of Safety Net Development, and she also works for the Department of Social Development for the Western Cape. Currently, Sharon is the Senior Manager responsible for the Children's and Families Program there in the Western Cape. This woman sat at my table. Again, I thought to myself, what on earth do I have in common with this woman? And ladies, you would be surprised how much I really did have in common with this woman. And there are many commonalities amongst us women here in this room. You may look at one person to the left and one person to the right and say, we're very different, but really, are we? We're very much alike. I want to also tell you about Suzanne Ackerman. She was our second speaker. She also sat at my table. She is the Transformation Director of Pick and Pay, and she is a co-author of a business book with a gentleman by the name of Raymond Ackerman. The book is entitled A Scrap to Catch a Mackerel. In 2011, she was awarded the Louis Volks Humanitarian Award by the Lions Club. What a dynamic woman. And you cannot believe the things that she does out in the community. If you don't think one person can change the dynamics of a community, talk to Susan Ackerman, because she will prove you wrong. I also want to mention Nabula Nadive. She is the assistant to Susan, and in 2010 she founded the Maiden Support Foundation in response to the epidemic of teenage pregnancy, the school dropout rate, and alcohol abuse in South Africa. You want to talk about a go-getter. You want to talk about somebody who has really, really had many trials and tribulations in her life. Talk to her, because she will tell you that there is change in South Africa, that social justice is something that she takes to her heart, and this woman will not stop until social justice has been met in her community. I also want to tell you about Janet Jobson. She's the portfolio manager of the DJ Murray Trist Leadership for a Winning Nation. She's also a national youth coordinator for Amnesty International. This woman also sat at my table. And so I was able to really talk to her about my experience, about how uncomfortable I felt sitting with such women, with such accolades as the women that I got to sit with. But you know what? She looked at me and she said, Stacey Lee, you are an advocate for change just for being here. I didn't have to say a word. I didn't have to be eloquent. I didn't have to look pretty or appear smart. She just said, just by you being in this experience, you are an agent for change. And I brought that back with me from South Africa. Last thing I want to tell you is about this woman that stands in the back of the room that is our fearless leader and that took us on this journey. Her name is Tiffany Lennon. I want to read to you some of her accomplishments. Tiffany Lennon, she chairs the Law and Society and Community-Based Research Programs at the Women's College of the University of Denver. Tiffany Lennon directs the college's internationalization efforts. Tiffany Lennon is a constitutional law and individual rights attorney and is a fellow for the Advancement Project in Washington, D.C. In her career, she has helped to frame strategic litigation to systematically address rights violations and has authored several policy reports with national implications. Her research areas include comparative constitutional politics and policy impact on unrepresented communities. Tiffany Lennon has also received numerous governmental and foundational grants. This is one of your instructors. She's at the back of the room, and she teaches at this college. I wanted to say, let's give a round of applause. But I want to say to you personally, Tiffany, thank you. Thank you for taking us all on this journey. You changed our lives.
We definitely learned a lot at the forum. It was great. Tiffany, she closed it very well, talking about restorative justice only as she can, and so it was a great experience. I wanted to bring up Ms. Tiffany in closing to just offer a couple of closing remarks. Yeah.
I would be the other Tiffany. So, I noticed that Leah Lovely put in a little sad face for the last day of the picnic on the beach. It was a really emotional day for all of us because over this 2 weeks, what really stuck with me from this trip were the relationships that we created with every person that we came across. And you'll have to forgive me if I get emotional, but these connections that we made were very personal, they were very deep, and they were very, very strong. We spent so much time with these women, and we were all, including the women from South Africa, taken way outside of our boundaries. We learned about each other, we learned about ourselves, we supported each other, we reached out to one another. When someone was feeling less strong, there was always someone else to pick them up. And through that, we found a lot of joy with each other. And that picture right there shows the joy that we had as a group. I mean, like, it was almost 30 women, and the connections that were made with absolutely every single person were astounding and amazing and truly unique. I made so many new friends with the women that I traveled with and the women that I met there, and these people are going to be with me for the rest of my life. And it was amazing to have that experience. And, you know, there's nothing like it. And any of you students that are sitting in this room that are considering going on one of these trips in the future, do it. You have to do it. When I had class with Tiffany for the first time, she mentioned a trip to South Africa, and I just said, I'm going. And everything fell into place, and I was able to go, and it completely changed my life. So we came back not only learning about, you know, pieces of social justice within the culture of South Africa, but we also learned a lot about social justice within ourselves. To me, it was the fact that we were all out of our element, we were all outside of our boundaries, and every single person, whether it was a student from here, from TWC, or a woman in South Africa, was always there to reach out and support one another. To me, that represents social justice, is that someone is always going to reach out and be supportive of someone else, no matter what their circumstances are or what the other person's circumstances are. That's the kind of community we experienced there, and it was amazing. And every single one of us brought that home. Every single one of us will live with that for the rest of our lives, because the women and the people that we met there were phenomenal. We, you know, sometimes go through our lives and think, I don't have time, this isn't going to work for me. And that's one thing that we all learned, was that we do have time, we will make it work, we can do it. So that was our trip. Now we're also going to hear a beautiful poem from Simone that she wrote for our trip.
Actually, if I could just ask all of my sisters to come up here so that we can all stand together as Simone reads this inspirational poem on behalf of all of us.
So I'm Simone Richardson, and I am a law society/IT major. And I want to thank Ms. Quinette. Most of us would not have been able to go on this trip.
Thank you so much.
And I wrote a poem, and it's called What We Learned. What we learned about a nation of greatness, of a people with passion and patience, of the love and respect of Nelson Mandela and Steve Biko, also a great fellow. We stood in the Indian Ocean. We listened to new ideas and notions. This is what we learned. We backpacked and hiked with great triumph, all while sifting through personal trials, getting to know each other better, as well as learning a new culture together. We developed friendships that will last a lifetime. Those are truly small steps for mankind. This is what we learned. We learned that we are mostly the same, but there are some things that lead us both to shame. Whether it's sections of US ghettos or SA townships, they are all just trying to get out of it. We ride around at times and feel ashamed, but at every stop, we are met with smiles that show no blame. We are crowned honorary queens of that land and are shown love that we didn't have to demand. This is what we learned. So we come back home, and what do? We come back and present to you. How can you tell the whole story of this amazing experience and all of its glory? We have condensed 2 weeks into an hour, but please don't underestimate this trip's power. This is what we learned.
So that's what we learned. You know, it was a lot. It's a lot to condense, like Simone said, into a 1 hour time slot. I know we're kind of over time. I don't even know what time it is right now.
Fantastic.
But if any of you guys have questions, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have. We can share anything more with you. It was an amazing experience. So thank you again to our donors, to all of our donors.
Hi, I'm Myra Eisenhardt. I was a former faculty member here, and I noticed one of you mentioned going back to South Africa, or to Africa at some point, working in conflict resolution. Did the experience affect any of the rest of you in terms of your career, future planning?
I intend to go back. I think we're going to try to have a study abroad program that's going to be based at the University of Cape Town. So I'm anxiously awaiting that, as is Simone. We're going to try to go together. So we'd like to spend a quarter or a semester of our time studying it. So hopefully we can make that work. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I also want to go back. I would just like to glean more from the NGOs and the centers that we were dealing with. And they're dealing with traumatic stuff all the time, but they face it bravely every day. And I would like to learn more about that process.
And I probably won't go back to South Africa unless it's hopefully on vacation soon, or making money after I graduate. I do want to work in areas where the refugees are. There's a lot of refugees. It changes from year to year to year, decade to decade. They bring a lot of tribal groups and clans together, and they don't understand each other, and they have to live together in these refugee camps, and that is where I want to be. So hopefully I'll get back to South Africa. If not, I'll be exploring.
I hope and will do everything within my power to take my kids to South Africa. I would like for them to have a similar experience to what I had at a younger age. I came home feeling like they're very ungrateful. So I would really, the trip made me a better person, and I would like that for my children as well.
Yes. Same for me, with my family. I felt like I came back a more patient person, a more patient mother. So the spirit of the people just kind of gets in you, you know.
Yeah.
They're so prideful, and you know, like you said, they have nothing, and they're so happy every day, and it was so genuine. That happiness and that spirit in them was genuine. Any other questions?
When's the next trip?
Is that rhetorical?
Yes, it is.
We are, Ian Halterman and I are taking some students, we don't know who yet, because we haven't even promoted the course yet, but we're going to Costa Rica over spring break. I don't know, it's spring break, thank you.
I just wanted to say really quick as well, because I would be remiss if we don't recognize our second fearless leader, Miss Megan. Megan kept us all together. She kept us all together. She kept it all straight. And in line. She's going to be an amazing mother. Because she had an opportunity to have many children on this trip. We love her. We thank her. Yes, for everything. Any other questions? Well, there you have it. We've said it all.